Welcome to We Believe, a consideration of religious beliefs and God's Word, examined in conversation by James F. Walsh, an attorney and Roman Catholic deacon, and Dr. Richard Schreiber, United Methodist minister and professor of theology. Each discussion embraces carefully chosen subjects selected in an effort to deepen your religious awareness in the sincere hope that We Believe will help provide a bridge of understanding among all the children of God.
Richard, welcome to We Believe.
We're at it again, Jim.
Richard, we have some very distinguished guests
For
here.
a change.
For a change. We have Bishop Edward U. Kimmick with us, the Roman Catholic Bishop of Nashville. And you also have another guest here, Richard.
And our guest is Bishop Roy Clark, United Methodist Bishop. And Bishop Clark, before he was bishop, was the minister of West End United Methodist Church in Nashville, and was there when I was tenor soloist in the choir there, and he and I together.
One of the high periods in the life of that church.
Right, absolutely. And he and I together performed the baptism of my daughter Kendall.
Oh, that was nice.
Marvelous.
Mm-hmm. Bishop Kimmick, we are in the middle of a series on the sacraments, the Roman Catholic 7 sacraments. These poor fellows only have 2, and we've struggled along as best we could, although Richard seems to have more to say in this session.
We
than
make
I
up
do.
for it in other words.
Verbiage, they make up for it. But more seriously, we're on the holy orders. We'd like to talk a little bit about the priesthood. We'd like to talk about what it means to be a bishop, to have, as they say, the fullness of the priesthood. And then I think, Richard, we will kind of interview Bishop Clark, right?
Right.
Well, with no further ado, Bishop, let me just start with you, if I may. You're Bishop Edward U. Kimmick. You are a bishop of Nashville, but you're not from Nashville. Where are you from? Tell us about that.
Well, being in Nashville, I don't know whether I should admit where I came from, but I originally from Trenton, New Jersey.
Wow.
I was born and raised there, ordained a priest, and served most of my priestly ministry there until coming to Nashville 3 years ago, and I'm a priest 35 years now, in 1996. So we had our beginnings there and education over in the Trenton area.
I'm afraid that he's the youngster of this crowd.
He's a youngster. Don't mention that, Richard. I stay 39 myself.
That's right. I'm only 28.
We won't talk about that, perhaps.
Bishop, going away, when did you decide to become a priest?
Well, in the time that, for our decisions, it was a little different than today. I think many of our young men who are coming to the priesthood today are making their decisions a little later in life, usually after having some career already, perhaps, in life. Whereas at our time, it seemed that if you didn't know what you're going to do by the time you're graduating from high school, that somehow you were dysfunctional. So it came to pass that I had been thinking on various times in different ways about my life, what exactly I might be doing, and I had this kind of a persistent feeling that somehow God was calling me to ministry as a priest. But I was indecisive, and happily with some good advice from a great priest who was teaching in the high school where I was matriculating, he gave me this kind of idea, because I was so uncertain, to make a decision, try it out, and if it was not the life for you, then step out. Yeah. Happily, it was a life for me. Went to a seminary in Baltimore, Maryland, and went on to study further in Rome. Wonderful blessing and wonderful privilege given through the kindness of my bishop, who wanted me to take advantage of the university, Gregorian University, which is run by the Jesuits, and for the final 4 years, the theological years of preparation, that happened to be in Rome as resident in North American College, and then ordained also at St. Peter's Basilica, a real special.
Right at the top.
John 23rd, Pope John 23rd, did that as a gesture to the American people. It had not been the general practice for us to be ordained there, but that's where it all happened.
So a priest goes to 4 years of theology and 4 years of philosophy, so you go quite quite a few years to college and to higher learning. We call in the Catholic Church, we say a priest, and of course our Protestant neighbors say minister. Could you tell us, why do we use the term priest and as opposed to minister? Or could you kind of talk a little about that?
Well, that was it's part of our tradition of our church that they speak of the priesthood. It borrows from our earlier traditions, even that this is somewhat of that continuation of the Jewish priesthood of the Old Testament, and that term has been used for us, indicating to the consecration that comes of through the ordination to this sacrament, which is named the priesthood, and then likewise we carry that title along with it. As you know, they use the word Father too in reference to us.
And of course, you have the Mass, which is a sacrifice, and
that's correct.
The priest is the person that offers the sacrifice.
Absolutely.
But then later on, you became a bishop. How does this come about? Do you campaign or give out literature, or buttons, maybe campaign buttons, or?
Hardly at all. Although, as St. Paul said, that it is a good and healthy thing to aspire to be a bishop. That's not the practice in the Catholic Church today, I can tell you that. Well, we do choose to become a priest. And incidentally, speaking of orders, the sacrament of orders, maybe we should preface this a little bit, that it has a three-tiered. A deacon is ordained, as you are a deacon, and then there is the priesthood, and then, as you were mentioning earlier in the program, the fullness of the priesthood, which means mainly a question of the power and authority. A bishop can administer all of the 7 sacraments, and that is...
You can ordain another person.
That's correct. That's correct. Ordain priests, and even on an occasion, you can ordain another bishop.
And we true to say, Catholics see it as Catholics see it. The bishops are the successors of the apostles.
Apostles, that's correct. And as we were somewhat saying in a humorous fashion, do you pick it or choose it? No. In the Catholic Church, it is a selection, a process that takes place with a consultation that usually goes on without your knowledge about it. The nominations come from the various archbishops, bishops, and the hierarchy of the church who look for candidates within the presbyterates, the various presbyterates, usually locally. I was made an auxiliary bishop before I came to be the Bishop of Nashville, and for 10 years served in that way. So you are selected in a sense. You don't run for the office. You're
might come as a surprise when it comes.
It's a big surprise because it all comes, unless you have some good context or had some kind of suspicions about this. It is by virtue and by way of a telephone call from the apostolic pronuncio, who is the papal representative, who tells you the news that the process has gone from the local scene and gone on through to Rome through the Congregation of Bishops, which reviews these and presents them eventually to the Holy Father.
I want to get back to that when we have some questions, because I think there are going to be some interesting things to get in. But I don't want to leave my co-host Richard out here, and we want to hear about the other side of the bishopric. So
you really get a call from the Vatican.
That's literally so.
Middle of the night,
early in the morning.
Well, Bishop Clark, it's harder for Methodists to get to be bishop.
Takes a lot more doing than that. That's right.
Tell us the differences, and start with ordination of a. You use the term minister. We would also say preacher, which would be in the tradition of the prophets.
Yeah, well, in the tradition of United Methodism, particularly because the Methodist movement began with lay preachers. And an interesting thing is that in the United Methodist history with John Wesley, he made a distinction between those who are ordained being those who are authorized to administer the sacraments, whereas he felt the preaching office could be fulfilled without ordination. And the theology of ordination for United Methodists was, from Wesley's perspective, is that you ordain persons in order that there's someone authorized to administer the sacraments. But preaching can take place without ordination. And we've had this tradition of local or lay preachers and ordained ministers. in Methodism as a result.
You know that I was a minister in England for a while, and there were 9 churches on our circuit with 4 ministers. We had 2 services in each church every Sunday, which means we took care of 8. There were 10 lay preachers at work every Sunday in that.
And it's a remarkable way it has worked.
Yeah.
We ordain also at the present time to deacon and elder. And deacon, as it's presently structured, is a preparatory step toward being ordained as an elder.
You and I both are first deacon,
and then
elder.
Now,
and then you went on.
Well, there's a serious discussion, as you know, in United Methodism now about changing that arrangement. And we're talking about establishing a permanent diaconate, which would not be seen as a step toward elders' orders, but would be seen as a equal order, but with a different function. And that obviously is creating a great deal of discussion. Now then, elders may be elected bishops, and we are elected by a jurisdictional conference, which is made up of half clergy and half laypersons, meets once each 4 years.
Meaning that the annual conferences, which in our case would be Middle Tennessee.
Right.
You were the bishop in South Carolina for how many years?
For 8 years.
Yeah. But those annual conference sessions, which are also equally represented by laity and clergy, then they elect delegates to the jurisdictional conference, which in our case would be the Southeast. And now,
and they each 4 years elect bishops. And we do campaign. That's a new development in the last 15 years, and they opened up the process so that it might give people an opportunity to participate and know who they were voting for better. Unfortunately, by opening up the process, they also politicized it. And so there are brochures and efforts to be elected a bishop now at this particular point. Now, bishops in the United Methodist Church are not ordained. I believe they are in the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes,
By that you mean your ordination as a minister, yes, but not ordained as a bishop.
We are not ordained as a bishop. We are consecrated as a bishop.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference is that I am an elder who has been consecrated to serve the function of a bishop. But if I were to resign as a bishop, I become an elder again. I'm no longer a bishop. That would not be true in the Roman Catholic Church in the sense. You're ordained a bishop and you are a bishop, but I am a bishop as long as I am functioning as a bishop in that particular position, so that we see the episcopacy as a superintending function in the life of the church to which you are consecrated, but your ordination is as an elder in the church.
John Wesley, the father of Methodism, actually preferred the term general superintendent.
Well, he did. You know, Wesley convinced himself theologically that a presbyter in the New Testament sense, elder, the words are synonymous, originally was also an episcopus, a bishop. Mm-hmm. And when the Anglican Bishop of London refused to ordain priests to come to America to provide the sacraments for the Methodists in America, Wesley very reluctantly used his theological understanding that he was an episcopus, a bishop, and he ordained persons to come to America. And the only reason he did it was that he wanted them to have the sacraments, and there were no Anglicans here to do that.
Well, Bishop, we're going to have to break here for just a minute, and then I think we want to come back to a phone call from the Vatican here we had earlier. But I think it's quite interesting, the different traditions that we come in. And I didn't realize, I thought once an Englishman, always an Englishman. We'll be right back and continue this discussion, Richard.
Today's We Believe program is brought to you by a grant from your local Knights of Columbus Council. Founded by Father Michael McGivney, the Knights of Columbus began when a few men gathered in a church hall in 1882. Today, the Knights of Columbus has a membership of over 1.5 million men, with local councils spanning the globe. The Knights of Columbus is a fraternal service order of Catholic men dedicated to providing support to the individual, the family, and the community. The principles of the order are charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. The Knights of Columbus truly surge with service. For more information, contact your local council or write We Believe, Post Office Box 50654, Nashville, Tennessee 37205. That's We Believe, Post Office Box 50654, Nashville, Tennessee 37205. Now back to our program.
Well, Bishop Kimmick, when we left off, we were talking about a midnight telephone call from the Vatican. It sounds real dramatic. Is that really how it was?
Well, it's not quite from the Vatican directly, except through the representative of the Holy Father, Archbishop Cacciavallan at the present time, who resides in Washington, D.C., and he is a spokesman and a message bearer for the Holy Father. It's a thrill.
He just calls you up?
That's all it is. You come up. I recall my telephone call for to be asked to be the Bishop of Nashville. You have a choice. You can say yes or no, that is. And of course, you are expected to say yes. It's an invitation from the Holy Father. Obviously, a great honor, a great responsibility. It's a fearful moment, to be honest with you.
You have to answer right then?
Well,
while you're on the line?
Some might want to postpone it a little bit. I thought this way. I made a pledge when I was a young priest that I would do whatever the bishop wanted me to do, and this is the Bishop of Rome, the successor of Peter, asking me to be a bishop. The first time to be an auxiliary bishop, and the second time to be Bishop of Nashville.
Not exactly the time to say, well, I don't think I would.
Let me think about that. Although you could do that, and there have been occasions when an individual perhaps did decline. And that is part of the reason why it is done with confidentiality.
You're supposed to keep quiet if you don't take the job, right?
That's right.
Not supposed to tell you got the offer.
And one of the hardest things, even when I received that telephone call, you think I'd like to go downstairs and tell everybody about it. And what happened was you got to keep it a secret until the press conference about 5 days later. So, but one does it, as I said, because with faith and trust in God, I'll do my best, and that's all we can be asked of.
Did you have any inkling before you got the phone call you might be on the short list, as they say?
Absolutely blindsided. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know.
You don't have to worry about telling your wife.
That's for sure, you know. But
did you call your mom?
My mom was deceased, but I had brothers and sisters and everybody else that you would like to tell about these things.
I want to ask you about one other thing. You've had lunch with the Holy Father.
That's correct. You know,
how do you get invitations like that?
That's the Pope, folks.
You know?
Yes, indeed. Well, one has a bishop, the Holy Father, as successor to Peter, and we as successors of the apostles. There is that same bond. And particularly with Pope John Paul II, he has made this very much something that he wants to emphasize and accent to us and make us feel that way. You are very welcome in Rome, and every 5 years, a bishop, Roman Catholic bishop, the ordinary of a diocese, as I am, the one who is in charge of a diocese, must make a report to the Holy Father. And we have a private conference with him, and that will later on include Mass in his private chapel, another discourse together with the other bishops of our area and region, and then lastly, at lunch with him. It's kind of nice.
How many at the lunch?
Well, it'll be a matter of perhaps 10, 15 of usually bishops.
Does he speak in English?
He does. His English is excellent now. He can converse and understand quite well. Perhaps some idiom might pass by, but he's very gracious. You feel very much at home. It's exciting to be there in the presence of such a marvelous, charismatic person that the Holy Father is. But but one does feel very comfortable with him. He makes you feel that way.
Well, could I say that we have a United Methodist bishop who has lunched with the Pope and is on a friendship relationship with the Pope, and recently the Pope presented him a scroll which was very elaborate and very meaningful to him. He's been the chair of the United Methodist Roman Catholic Dialogue, Bishop William Cannon, and he enjoys the same has the same report on the graciousness of the Pope.
Where is he from, Bishop?
That's
Well,
an
from
Atlanta
Atlanta.
name.
Atlanta, right.
Yeah. He was the dean at the Candler School of Theology when I was in school at Vanderbilt. I remember meeting him. Yeah.
I want to ask Bishop Kimmick one more question here before we get on to another. You're from New Jersey. How have you been treated down here in below the Mason-Dixon
Well,
line?
I found out that the people here live up to that reputation of Southern hospitality.
Well,
great
that's
welcome.
nice.
It's been there. You come, as I indicated to you, that I did not anticipate being called to service here in Nashville. My heritage and ethnicity is Polish American, and I speak Polish, from a gift from my parents. And my thoughts were that if ever I was to serve in a diocese, it would probably be in the Northeast, where you would have that kind of demographics.
Yeah.
But it was quite a surprise. It's a different culture. You come with a little bit of anxiety, and but I felt very comfortable. The welcome was immediate, and in the 3 years now of service, it's been shown to me both by the priests, by the people, and also by those of other faith traditions, as we are here together. What a wonderful
I was just thinking we
opportunity.
couldn't have had this 20 years ago before the ecumenical things.
Correct.
You've learned to eat grits?
I liked grits before, so thank God, and fried catfish isn't
All right.
bad either.
Well, that's good, good. Richard, I know you've got some questions.
Well, I think Bishop Clark had some questions he wanted to ask.
Yes, I was interested in our discussing the office of the deacon, and I would be particularly interested in how that functions. You're a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church, so I'd be interested in how that functions.
Because of what you said before, that it's kind of up for grabs right
we're
now.
looking at that, and would be interested in how it functions in your group.
Well, it has been restored as a practice of ordaining permanent deacons for now 25 years. It was about 1970. It was part of the discussions of Vatican II and enlarging this ministry. There were deacons in the early church. We are ordained deacons also as we go into the priesthood, but we call that a transitional diaconate.
So you have two ordinations as deacon, one permanent and one transitional?
Well, we would like to focus now on the word diaconate, but there are two different kind of categories. One is going on to the priesthood. We have young seminarians or older seminarians now who go on to the priesthood, but then also men who are being ordained to the permanent diaconate. And this has been very successful. They borrow the word very much literally, diaconia, service. And that's what they are. They work for the service of the church, and they have done great work in helping in enlarging the ministry of the church, especially in particular in visitation of the sick and in general assistance to the priests in their parishes.
Well, the interesting thing in United Methodism is that the concern is that if you have this transitional deacon, that makes it a second-class office. And even if the persons who are ordained to permanent role of a deacon, that's still looked upon as a second-class office because it's can be construed as a step to being a full elder. And that's what we are fighting about politically, so to speak, within the United Methodist Church.
Well, there were questions. Excuse me.
I was just going to say, is it an issue of women in the ministry?
Well,
Doesn't that involve some
Well, women have been deaconesses, and then we've had what we call diaconal ministers, which is a consecrated, not an ordained office. And now we're talking about an ordained deacon, picking up on the biblical tradition of deacons. But there is this feeling, but it's not just for women, Richard. It's the whole feeling that somehow in the church, the person who is the elder, who is the preacher, who is the celebrant of the sacraments, is more of a first-class citizen.
That's right.
Than the person who is just dedicated, and I said just, but that's the way it looked at, dedicated to service as a deacon. And we are struggling to find a way to establish the permanent diaconate in a way that it would be really separate from this step up, but we haven't found a way to do that
In a
yet.
partnership sort of.
Yeah.
As I remember, the first deacons were ordained to wait on tables.
That's right.
So we,
And they were servants.
May I just respond very quickly, perhaps, to the bishop's
right.
thoughts and observations, and only to say that there were problems in the 25 years here, just exactly the identity of the role of the permanent deacons and a definition of it. It's an issue, and just exactly how they are perceived. It's still an ongoing situation for us, and to grow into that a little bit better.
Well, we have been delighted to have both of you here, Bishop Kimmick and Bishop Clark. This is an ecumenical group. Richard, I think we need to charge more for getting a higher class program, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's been delightful having you both, and hope you can be back with us again very, very soon. Thank you, Bishop.
And thank you for the
Bishop.
invitation.
Yes.
You have been watching We Believe, a discussion of God's Word and religious belief as presented by your host, Mr. Jim Walsh, a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church, and his guest, Dr. Richard Shriver, a United Methodist minister. Today's program has been brought to you by a grant from your local Knights of Columbus Council. The Knights of Columbus is a fraternal order of Catholic men dedicated to the service of God and neighbor. Last year alone, the Knights provided over $109 million and 55 million volunteer hours helping those in need. The Knights of Columbus truly surge with service. Deacon Walsh and Dr. Shriver would like to hear from you if you have questions you would like answered or topics you want discussed. Or if you would like a free booklet giving further information about the topics considered today, write We Believe, Post Office Box 50654, Nashville, Tennessee 37205. That's We Believe, Post Office Box 50654, Nashville, Tennessee 37205. Visit our website at www.webelieveshow.org. That's www.webelieveshow.org. Our email address is jimwalsh@webelieveshow.org. When you write, be sure to mention the number of the program. Today's program title is 852 Holy Orders. Thanks for watching. God bless you.